Hello and welcome, I am Arumba. Thank you for joining me. This is Arumba's Adjustments number 3. So it's been about 4 months since the last time I did one of these, and I've had my notepad document nearby, and anytime something has come up and I've just thought, hey, that'd be a good way to make the game better, I wrote it down. So I've got a good list now. We've got, looks like somewhere around, 15 actual adjustments for this video. And then a couple extra bonus ones that don't really deserve their own number. But without further ado, let's get started. We'll go through them one by one in no particular order, and we'll see if maybe some of these changes can be implemented in the game. Now, as always, this is just my opinion. That's why it's called Arumba's Adjustments. So you're allowed to have your own opinion, but I would like it if you would comment down below on your thoughts on these changes, and if you have your own suggestions, please make them there as well, because a lot of times there are very good suggestions in the bottom of the video, in the comments, that I take a look at, and they may end up in the next video. So, without further ado, let's begin. Adjustment number 1. So one thing that I'd love to see added to the game is a revamped trade interface here. There's a couple things about this that I think need improvement. Number 1, it would be nice if the information that it showed us was actually correct. You'll notice that it says incoming 3.26, local 3.96, outgoing 3.71 equals a total of 3.42. No, it really doesn't. That's not the total trade power or the total trade value in the node. That's what's left after the outgoing has gone away. If we look in the ledger, we can see the actual correct amount. We can look at trade nodes, and then if we look and we find Alexandria in this list, sort by total, we'll see that the actual total trade power in the node is 7.22, which is local plus incoming. That's the actual amount that we are affecting when we do trade in that node. The outgoing, this number is just not correct. So this should be corrected. Second is that, and more importantly really, is that I would love to see total trade power in the node. We should be able to see that somewhere, rather than have to take all of these numbers and add them together, which there can be dozens of countries in some trade nodes. We should just be able to see what is the total trade power in the node. Because when you are considering what to do with your ships, this tooltip right here, when you're looking to protect trade, doesn't really tell you too much. It increases our trade value. It doesn't actually practically help you. But knowing what the total trade power in a node would help out tremendously, because obviously the lower the total trade power in a node, the more effective a ship would be, because it's going to be a larger percentage relative to the total. I would love to see that total trade power on this page here. On this page here, we should be able to sort by total trade power in nodes, and then also here, we should be able to see the total trade power in a node. That is, I think, probably far more relevant than things like total, trade value in node. This number, again, this needs to be correct. Trade value in node is not 3.42. The trade value in the node is this 7 point something or else. Because while that's what's in there currently, that's not what you're actually drawing from as income. If I send more ships here, the total trade value in the node is technically going to go up, which is, again, it doesn't make sense. The actual value in the node hasn't changed at all. It's just that I'm going to draw a larger percentage of the total that is actually there. So that's adjustment number 1. Adjustment number 2. So how often has it been that you are in the ledger and you are looking around at something, whether it is the score, because you are trying to see how you're shaping up against certain people, or you're trying to look at the military view to see how strong someone's country is, and you wish that you could just find the country that you're looking for. For me, it happens all the time. What I would love to see on here is either the ability to do something like this, where we can sort by specific regions, or by best guess, allies, specific continents, enemies, neighbors, etc. Or perhaps something like this, where we could do neighbors like a button, something like this as well. But even better would be, just like in Crusader Kings 2, there is a search query that you can use in the Find Characters interface, where you can just type any text string and have it remove anything from the list that doesn't fit that criteria. So for example, if I had this text field right here where I could just type Timurids, everyone that's not Timurids would go away. And I could sort, and I could just see, like, okay, I just want to check on Timurids real quick. Just look up Timurids. Or even better would be to have both, where you have the search field where you can isolate by text, but also be able to say, I only want to see neighbors. I only want to see my rivals. I only want to see my allies, or whatever. Something that could sort the ledger. Because while the ledger itself has all of the information, it takes a tremendous amount of time to actually sort through all of the various alliance chains and figure out whether what you're planning on doing is a good idea or not. So having more sortable features or more searchable features in the ledger, I think, would be a very good change. That's adjustment number 2. Adjustment number 3. One of the things that you may have noticed when you watch me play Europa Universalis IV is that I use a tremendous number of key bindings, and I love using many different types of map modes. Unfortunately, EU4 only allows us to keybind 6 buttons, and I've never really understood why that's the case. We have plenty of buttons available. We have a complete unused row of F2 through F8. We could use 1 through 0, and yet we are only allowed to use Q, W, E, R, T, Y. Now, it's been so ingrained in me that I'm kind of used to just having 6, but what I would propose is, and maybe this is not possible, I'm not sure, but this would be the ideal way for me to see this implemented. Either give us more actual key bindings, allow us to use more buttons. That would be one way of doing it. But if for some reason that's not possible, allow us to add more map modes to a specific key binding. So let's say, for example, right now my simple terrain key binding is shortcut key Q. If I go into here and I look at this and I wanted to add this, what if I could right click on actual terrain and add that to the Q map mode? You say, well, you already have that keybound, so you can't do that. But what if I wanted both of them to be keybounded to Q? And now, whenever I press Q, it's going to cycle between any map mode that is keybound to that keybind. So I could cycle back and forth between the simplified terrain map mode by pressing Q, and then if I press Q again, it would show the regular terrain map mode. Press Q again, it goes back to simplified terrain map mode. And what if instead of having just, say I use R for supply, what if I wanted to have R be supply and R is also revolt risk? And you could specify a priority order that, if I'm on the political map mode and I press R the first time, whichever one I add to the list first will be what it goes to. It'll go to supply. But then if I press R again, it will go to maybe, I don't know, fort level map mode. Something needs to be done to allow us to use these 27 key bindings. 27 map modes, excuse me. We only have 6 keybinds and 27 map modes. I mean, there's so many available. If we just allowed it so that each keybind could use 2 or maybe even 3 or 4 different map modes and have it cycle through them, it would be a tremendous improvement in the way to access this stuff at a glance. I need the fort map mode, but I don't have an unavailable key binding to use. I need the trade map mode or the trade goods. I know that when it finally gets fixed, I'm going to want to start using the economical map mode when this actually gets turned into the total development like it should be, because right now it's showing base tax is completely useless. But anyway, that would just be a major improvement. So that is adjustment number 3. Adjustment number 4. In line with number 3, having access to more key bindings to map modes should make it possible to add more map modes to the game without overloading the player and potentially overloading the interface. So what we desperately need in this game right now is a truce map mode. And let me explain what I'm envisioning, and maybe this will be how it comes out, maybe it'll be completely different, but I'm not sure. If we had a map mode that was strictly dedicated to peace, what it would say is that it colors provinces according to time until truce expires, in various grades of green to red, depending on time remaining. Green provinces would be very close to expiring. Red provinces would be very far away. Of course, the longest you can be is 15 years. So let's say you activate the truce map mode. What you would see is, right now, something exactly like this. Every province around you would be gray, because you can attack them, because there is no truce. But let's say that we were at war with England and we peaced out, then this would start off maybe like a yellowish hue, because it would be a 5-year truce. And then as we get closer and closer to the actual deadline, it would get dark green, then bright green, and then it would become gray, because the truce would expire. And right then you would get your pop-up saying the truce has expired. This would make it so much easier to look around the map and say, okay, if I'm playing as France or Hungary or whatever, I'm playing as somebody, who can I actually attack, and how long will it be visually until I can do that? Instead of having to hover over your truce tooltip and see, okay, in chronological order, these are the countries, geographical order, I have no idea where these countries are. I've got to just look at each and every country to determine exactly when those truces expire. So I would love a truce map mode. So that would be adjustment number 4. Adjustment number 5. This one is related to army management. And what I'm trying to think about here is, let's say I'm the ruler of a country, right? I should have complete control over what the army does. I should be able to tell them to disband, to train. I should be able to tell them to consolidate, which we can do. I should be able to tell them to consolidate but leave empty regiments. Those things are good. But what we don't have is the ability to average out the regiments. And so what I'm asking for is an average regiments button. Instead of just consolidating regiments, what if I want to average them? I should be able to grab my infantry, click the average button, and have it take the 2,314 regiment or 2,314 infantry that I own, divide it equally amongst 4 regiments. Why would this be useful? Sometimes you have a ton of manpower and you want to reinforce. Other times you might have a very, very damaged army, but tons that are completely reinforced, and you're limited in the speed that you can reinforce your army because only 1 regiment can actually recover. By allowing us to spread the regiments thin, by averaging them out, we could increase reinforcement speed, increase the rate that we draw from our manpower pool, while still maintaining the same number of regiments overall. It's going to cost the same amount of money to reinforce, we'd just be able to do it quicker. So basically what I'm asking for, you've given us a button to slow down the consolidation of our troops by doing this, but what we need is a button now to increase the speed that we can reinforce our regiments by spreading them out. This could also be useful because, let's say for example, I'm going to fight a 3-stack enemy. Maybe I do want to have three equally strength infantry regiments because I've got 3 cannons behind and I don't want any of them to end up in the front line. So that would be adjustment number 5, an average regiments button. Adjustment number 6. One of the buttons that we have for navies allows us to detach damaged ships. Right, it's actually a button that's up here. Detach damaged. And for some reason this is only available for navies, because you can detach your damaged navies and send them over to a port and get them repaired. What I would like to see is a detach damaged for land units as well. Because let's say for example I hold down shift and I do a shift consolidate of my regiments, and I've got this one unit that's not at full strength. What I'd like to do is be able to detach damaged, grab that one unit, and then be able to send him back to friendly terrain where I know I'll have a higher reinforcement rate. Now in this case it's only 1 regiment, so it's not really a big deal, but what about when you get into the late game and you've got tons of armies and you do shift consolidate and all of a sudden you've got 6 regiments that have 0 troops in them, and obviously they're not going to reinforce in enemy territory, and they're going to suffer lots of attrition because every single regiment suffers attrition. It's not based on total number of troops, it's based on each regiment suffering attrition. So if I want to detach those damaged regiments, what I'll find myself doing a lot is, let's say these are all 0s, I'll be doing this, grabbing the damaged ones and sending them home. Having a detach damaged regiments button just makes sense because we have one for navies. We should be able to do the same thing for armies. That's adjustment number 6. Adjustment number 7. Now this one is maybe just an opinion on game balance, which I don't normally do gameplay mechanics type things. It's usually more about the interface, but just as an idea, I noticed in this patch 1.12 that the supply limit calculations are very, very low these days because basically you have a base supply, 6 in this case, terrain gets factored in, and then everything else is a percent-based modifier on that raw value. And what happens is, as you get technology, you get more supply because you have more modifiers on that base supply. But it's never going to get much bigger than it really starts out as because it's always a percentage-based multiplier on the base. And I noticed that development is actually a percent-based increase as well. And this, again, this is just an idea, but what if instead of having development increase 2% of extra supply, what if it increased the actual base supply? What if we had base 6, terrain plus 3, development plus, I don't know, 0.5? And then all of the other percentage-based multipliers could be from technology and those things. But by developing a province, doesn't it just make sense that the base supply should be higher? I don't know. It's just an idea, but something to consider. That's adjustment number 7. Adjustment number 8. This one's related to automatic fleet transportation. Have you ever noticed that it's far faster to move a ship into a port, out to the sea zone, and into another port than it is to have troops move from land to sea to another piece of land? I mean, let's just demonstrate it real quick. If we were to say, take our infantry, and then maybe we take 4 of them, and we load them up onto the ships. Alright, and then at the same time, here, let's keep them in port for just now. Let's get one of these ships out into the Straits of Dover. We'll take our 4 stack of infantry and attach them to this navy here. We're going to tell them to go to Caw. At the same time, we're going to grab another 4 infantry, and we're going to march them to Caw across the 4 that are already there. Now, looking at it, we can already see this unit will arrive on March 3rd. This navy will arrive on February 10th. Now, I don't think that this is actually correct, but let's just find out what the actual dates are. I'm pretty sure that this one's going to be accurate. February 10th is going to be the date that we actually get there. So we go 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. 3 days. 1 day to the port, maybe it's 2. Second day, right back into there. We took 3 days to get there, but from marching, it's going to take us much longer. We actually arrive in the Straits of Dover on the 19th, and someone will have to go back and check to see when we actually started this little test. But then once we get to the Straits of Dover now, is it actually going to be... Oh god, it actually is March 3rd. We got there damn near a month early by using automatic fleet transportation, or sorry, by actually doing it manually. And so, what this comes down to is that when you use automatic fleet transportation, it needs to use the port. It has to go into the port, pick up the troops, go to the port, because it's so much faster. Now, if you don't have access to the port, I have no issue with it landing in the port of Kent, going to the Straits of Dover, and then doing the invasion of Picardy, and going from there. But if I have naval access because I've asked for it from a country, if I ask for fleet basing rights, and I try to transport troops from Kent to Holland, it should go port to port. It's just, it has to be that way. Otherwise, there's no purpose to even using automatic fleet transportation. It's so much slower, you're far better off doing it yourself. So that would be adjustment number 8. Adjustment number 9. What I would like to see is the ability to have the map mode stay the same when I'm trying to build buildings. When you go to your building macrobuilder and you say I want to build like a marketplace or something, and you're looking at this is useful information. But if while I have the macrobuilder open, I switch to the trade map mode, because I'm trying to determine this information overlaid on top of the trade screen, that's what I want to know. I want to see the 3.22, but then also, is it in this trade zone? But the problem is that when I click, the map mode goes back to this other one, which I don't even really know what this other one is. It's showing potential buildings, maybe, the number of buildings that are available, but that information's still there already. It's showing whether there's like an available building, but every time you click, it goes away. This should just be able to stay this one, but have the colors overlaid on top of it here, so that you can actually build along trade zones and build in certain specific areas. For instance, if I want to be on the political map mode to build forts, let me be on the political map mode to build forts. But if I want to be on the, say, maybe I want to be on the trade goods map mode so that I can only build my workshops in good... See, again, it just did it right there. If I want to only build my workshop in places that have good trade goods, like cotton, then I should be able to stay on this trade zone, this map mode. I chose to put it on there. I'm perfectly fine with going to the build screen and then having it automatically default to this. But if while I'm doing this, I specify a map mode, let it stay that way, please. So that would be adjustment number 9. Adjustment number 10. This is related to the tooltips that you'll find somewhere in the game, like on the outliner. What I'd like to see is on the armies interface, or the armies subgroup of the outliner, and the navies subgroup, get rid of some of this superfluous information that really doesn't need to be here. Well, most notably, the list of all of the ships. Gonin, Kandira, Kaikara, Erzin, etc. And the same thing here. We can see the 1st Regiment, 957, Yaya Infantry. This information doesn't need to be here, because if I needed to see that information, I could click on this and see it here. Like, tooltips need to show you information that you want to know at a glance, but not all the time. This is already here, though. There's like no point in having it over here. What would be really useful to have on this tooltip is that, yes, I can see there's a little skull letting me know that I'm suffering attrition, but imagine, if you will, that this entire thing down here showing all these regiments is just gone, and the tooltip is nice and small and concise, and it just says infantry 18,183, cavalry 6,699, artillery 0. Everything else is gone, okay? But below that it says attrition 1.2%, estimated monthly reinforcement 300 or something, 4,000. I don't know what the number would be, but show information that I might actually care about when I hover over this tooltip. I don't need to see all that superfluous stuff, but I would like to know, what is that number there? What is that there? The 3.6. It doesn't show it here. It doesn't say, like, it shows it in red, so I know it's bad. It shows a little skull, so I know that's bad. But what's the number? Because in order to actually see the number, I've got to go and I've got to hover here. Same thing with navies. I don't care what the names of the ships are on this tooltip. I can look them up here. I can rename them here. We can call them, the Nina, the Santa Maria, and whatever it's called. But I don't need to see it here. I need to see more information that is actually relevant, like what is the attrition, and is it going to reinforce? Estimated monthly repairs would be good for navies, because depending on the type of port you're in, you might or might not have the buildings. Come on, let me guess. Yeah, you might not have the buildings that increase repair speed. So knowing things like that, I think, would be far more useful than what we're seeing over here. That would be adjustment number 10. Adjustment number 11. One of the complaints that a lot of people have had in patch 1.12 is that there was an erroneous change to the message setting when a unit arrives at its destination. And what it's doing is, now every single time your trade fleet moves through a sea zone, you get a pop-up, or you get an alert saying that they've arrived at their destination, because they've arrived there. And I've always had this off because it's just spam. You have so many armies, so many navies, that you just get inundated with information that you don't need. What I would love to see is, on each individual army or each individual navy, a checkbox that says show arrival notifications. This would be something where, in the message settings, if you say when one of our units arrives at its destination and you have it set to be a pop-up, it will only show pop-ups for armies which you've specified deserve to have army notifications. So let's say I've got 10 armies and most of them are just sitting around doing nothing, but one of them I have marching to a location where I'm preparing to tackle some rebels, for example. I could select the army, click on the button, and then from now on, this army is going to toggle. It's going to give me arrival notifications. So if I tell them to go somewhere, I'll get a pop-up. When I'm done using that army, I can turn it off, and I don't need to know when he goes from province A to province B anymore. But that would massively improve the value of this when one of our units arrives at its destination message setting. Because as it is right now, it's pretty much useless, and it's just too much information. But there are tons of times where you do want to know when a couple armies get where they're supposed to be. So that would be adjustment number 11. Adjustment number 12. One of the things that happens when you have a colonial nation or a subject nation like a personal union is that a lot of information you should normally have access to because they are your subject, you don't get. And I believe this is simply due to the fact that it's a different type of relationship. But I feel like you should have this information anyway because you are the overlord. You should know what's going on in your subjects. So a couple of those things would be like, if you have a colonial nation and they are converting a province, then you can't tell the conversion progress. You can't hover over the little man with his book and see how far he is towards doing it. You can't see this here, how close he is to converting it. If they're culture converting, if they're coring, if they're building an army, if they're building a building, like these are things that you should have access to as the overlord. Not if it's another country, but when you are the overlord, you should. And then the same thing when you have a personal union. If you are England and you have a personal union over France, for example, then you should be able to see when they're done coring stuff because they are your subject. It's not like they're going to hide the information from you, but for whatever reason you can't actually tell. So it's a minor change, but something I think that should be done. That's number 12. Adjustment number 13. This kind of ties all the way back to adjustment number 3 with the increased number of loot bindings available. I would love to see either a map mode for loot status, or at the very least, just like in Crusader Kings 2, some sort of a status indicator on an army for when there's no loot available in a province. So let's say that you're the Oirat Horde doing horde things, and you're at war with Ming, taking all of their monies, and when you put your army in the province, there's no indicator if the loot bar is depleted. There should be a visual indicator on the map that I can just see, yes, this army is done looting, so that I can know that I need to move him to the next province. But even better would be an actual map mode where we could say, you know, loot map mode, and then you could see dark red would be no loot available, bright green would be lots of loot available. And that way you could just kind of say, okay, I'm going to move these armies in this direction, I'm going to take all this loot. Because looting, after they've changed it in 1.12, has suddenly become a very active, engaging, and I think fun thing to do in Europa Universalis IV. It almost feels like playing as the Vikings in Crusader Kings 2. It's just one of the features to the game that I really enjoy, but we need more information. We need to be able to see what's going on, and right now there's just no way to easily do it aside from clicking on every single province and just manually remembering, okay, yeah, I looted that area a little while ago, it might be recovered, but you gotta click on every province. So that would be adjustment number 13. Adjustment number 14. Now this is another kind of a change that it may be considered like a gameplay mechanic and not just an interface type thing, but I'm going to do it anyway because so many people have commented on it, and I think that they have justification, and I think there's an argument to be made. I think it's time that we have the option to toggle reserve status for armies, which is effectively the same thing as mothballing a navy. What we should be able to do is reserve status an army. Just click a button that says you're on reserve, which means we're paying you bare minimum, and that's it. You're not going to get any reinforcement. You guys are just reserves. And what that would do is if you have, say, 200,000 troops, and you just need to raise maintenance on a couple armies to sequester or like deal with a rebellion by lowering unrest by having troops present, friendly troops -5 for example, you don't have to have your entire army maintained. You could leave it at max maintenance when you want to, but then reserve status the armies that don't need it. Now, I had kind of considered some things, like maybe you could make it so that an army can only have a certain maximum that they can reinforce to, but that's design stuff. I'll leave that up to the guys over at Paradox, but I really hope that something like this can be implemented. We need the ability to control which troops we pay the most money to. And I don't think it's that big of a stretch to ask for reserve status. I mean, it fits the time frame. I mean, doesn't it? I guess I don't really know. I wasn't there. But I want it, so can we please have it? That's adjustment number 14. Adjustment number 15. So, how often has it been that you have played as, I don't know, Spain or Portugal, Castile, or anybody really that ends up with extra missionaries and you just have nothing to do with them? This is actually an adjustment that was spurned by, or not spurned, sorry, but thought of by Northern Line. There should be something that you can do with your missionaries when you don't have a province to convert. And a very simple idea would be that you should be allowed to send a missionary to a province to have them preach. So let's say, for example, normally you'd click this button to convert a province, but if it's already your true religion, if it's already going to be part of this, tolerance of the true faith, whatever your true faith is, then you should still be able to click it, but send a missionary to preach. What this would do is it would cost active missionary maintenance, and what he would do is, I don't know, lower unrest by 1% because he's preaching. Or maybe he could do something else, but he should be able to do something. Instead of just having your missionary sitting around doing nothing, at least allow him to preach to the lower unrest. Or maybe even, and this is again kind of gameplay-y-ish, maybe I should be able to send my missionary down to a Catholic-owned province in an enemy country and have him incite rebellion. Or, raise unrest because it's the wrong religion. And maybe, this one's a really big stretch, maybe I should be able to send my missionaries to other countries to try to convert their provinces too. And if they got caught, it would be an aggressive expansion pop-up thing, and of course they would be sent home, just like how diplomats that are trying to support rebels get sent home, and then you're not allowed to send them again. But maybe we should just be able to allowed to use our missionaries. Because as it is right now, with Portugal, Castile, Spain, you end up with 4 or 5 missionaries, there's nothing you can do with them. There's absolutely nothing to have them sit on. So that would be adjustment number 15. Alright, and now to wrap up the adjustments video, there's just a couple things that I don't really feel deserve their own number, but they are worth mentioning. A couple new alerts that could be useful. One would be that if you have mercenaries and you are at complete peace, no actual wars, there should be an alert that says you have mercenaries. And all that would be is just say, you have active mercenaries. While you're at war, you'd never see it, because obviously you know that you have mercenaries. You hired them because you're at war. You need them. But as soon as you go to peace, you should have a pop-up that says, hey, you've got active mercenaries. And you might right-click on it and just say, that's fine, I want to keep them. You know, I'm used to having a standing army of mercenaries. Maybe if you are playing as like the Netherlands or something and you always use mercenaries, you would just right-click, disable that alert. You know, get rid of it and just not even deal with it. But I'd say probably 9 times out of 10, if you're at peace, mercenaries cost a ton of money, and you probably forgot. And you're just bleeding out money because you've got mercenaries and they've got mixed in with some army, or maybe you integrated a country who had mercenaries, and you didn't check to see if there were mercenaries in that army. And so now you've been paying mercenaries for years and years for no reason at all, while you have max manpower. There should be an alert saying that you've got active mercenaries when you are at peace. Another alert would be for when you can core a province. So this is because sometimes you take land and you don't have enough monarch points to core all of it. You start coring and then you get to the bottom of the list and you realize, I don't have enough, I can't do it all. And then you go do something else. And then 6 years goes by and you realize, oh crap, I never cored that one province. Because you built up enough points, you could have done it, but there's no alert to say you can core uncored provinces, or you may core provinces. Another example would be if you are colonizing and you are colonizing the same continent. I don't know, maybe somehow you did an Irish exodus and you're over here and you forgot that you have to core provinces on your own territory or on your own continent. There's no pop-up. There's nothing that says, hey, you've got uncored land that you can core. We should have an alert that says you can core uncored land. One other thing is when looking at a royal marriage, let's say we find a country who has a royal marriage. So Great Britain, I'm sure you probably have one. Don't you? Where is it? There it is. Royal marriage with Brittany. This should tell you somewhere in here who started the royal marriage, because the royal marriage breaks when the instigator's character dies. So if Great Britain started the royal marriage with Brittany, and Great Britain's leader dies, the royal marriage ends. But if Brittany started it, then the royal marriage continues. But there's no way of knowing who started the royal marriage, unless you just happen to be paying attention when you did it. You can't tell at all for other countries, but knowing when a royal marriage will break a relationship or won't is useful to know, especially for your own country, because it's just something we should be able to know, and it should be added to the game. So I'd love to see that added to the tooltip. And then other than that, that's about it, really. So, okay, well, I'm going to wrap up the video here. Let me know what your thoughts are. Again, these are just ideas. They don't have to be implemented. I hope that some of them do. Wiz and I have this kind of running gag going where we keep score over which ones are good and which ones are bad, and he always gets more points than I do because he cheats. And he, you know, it's like Whose Line Is It Anyway, where he makes up the points and they don't matter. And but, you know, I think that a lot of these ideas are going to be things that should be in the game, and, you know, I put a lot of thought into them. Let me know what your thoughts are. You know, put some comments down below. If you have ideas that you think would be good to be put into the game, make comments, because I read those comments and I meet with these guys. I've met with them face to face twice now in the last 6 months, and I talk to Wiz. I talk to the lead developer of the game. If you want stuff that should be implemented into the game to be noticed, this is probably a good way to get it on their radar. So, as always, I appreciate your comments, appreciate your time. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you again in the next one.